So Liberals are having a fundraiser tonight.
Yes.
In Montreal.
Yes.
Prime Minister.
Yes.
Under the new rules, is it any different, or is it?
Okay, let's review. It's the same cash for access. It's the same breaking of the Prime Minister's own ethical rules. And the Liberals are playing some kind of Jedi mind trick, saying these are not the fundraisers you're looking for. Like, it's the same thing. Lobbyists were trying to get into these meetings. Well, why would a lobbyist attend a meeting like this and fork over a few $100? Well, to lobby the Prime Minister. They've since been taken off, but lobbyists assumed what all the rest of us assumed, that these were opportunities where you pay money and you can lobby the Prime Minister in a private, intimate kind of way. The idea that these are somehow public, well, they're public if you've got $250 to give to the Liberal Party of Canada. If you don't, you're not allowed in. That's not my definition of public.
I appreciate the May 4th reference.
Thank you. I'm working hard, man. Yeah.
But
hours, really.
How is this not different from any other kind of... Under these new rules, you guys do the same thing, right? Like,
right, with the difference being this is the government of Canada, and people are paying to access and lobby the Prime Minister and ministers of the Crown. Trudeau's own ethical guidelines say there will be no perception of special access. There will be no privilege granted. No, these are his ethical guidelines. Not even the perception of special access. This is beyond the perception. This is special access. If you have money, you can have nice private time with the Prime Minister of Canada and anyone in his cabinet. That is the difference between an opposition member or somebody running for party leadership, is they're not the ones that are crafting the budget. They're writing the new laws, signing new trade deals. These are, sometimes, as you know, billions and billions of dollars in investment decisions that people have at stake. So the $250, $500, whatever it happens to be, is cheap for these folks to go in and lobby in the most intimate way, like you and I are talking right now, the Prime Minister of the country. And it's unseemly, and it breaks the Prime Minister's own ethical guidelines.
So you think cabinet ministers, Prime Minister included, should not have...
Yes. If they wanted to follow what Mr. Trudeau laid out as the new bar, the new standard for Canadian politicians in his government, then they couldn't have these things because they are, by definition, privileged access to the Prime Minister, if you have money. Because the average Canadian cannot phone the Prime Minister's office this afternoon and say, I'd like 15 minutes with the PM, and get it. Can they? No, of course not. Who does get that 15 minutes is somebody who's got a few $100 in their hand and willing to give it to the Liberal Party of Canada. And we know that because when they announced this event, a bunch of industry lobbyists signed up thinking it is what it is. I pay a few $100, I get to lobby the Prime Minister, which is their job as a lobbyist.
So they bring a Democratic Reform Minister brings a law codifying some of these things
yes.
that they've adopted voluntarily.
Yes. Oh, well, first of all, any law the new minister wants to bring forward, we're going to look at, of course. You can understand and maybe appreciate why our level of trust with this government on democratic issues, electoral reform, parliamentary budget office, omnibus bills, these fundraising scandals, is very low. Because I think that the trust level with Canadians is very low, and the concern is only raising that they voted for something different, but they're getting all of the same and wondering what happened. What happened to these guys? When Mr. Trudeau came in, he said, we're going to be different. You're not going to get special access to us if you have a lot of money. He said, we're going to change the voting system. He said, we're going to give the Parliamentary Budget Office new power. He's trying to give the Senate veto over the PBO. Are you kidding me? The Senate of Canada?
The distinction, though, you're making between cabinet ministers and, say, opposition
yes.
politicians.
Yeah.
Mr. Mulcair has some clout in this place. Are you saying that he should be able to fundraise, have private fundraisers, raise money just because he's not in government?
Look, we're prepared to look at all of the laws with regards to fundraising, both within leadership races, opposition, government members. I'm talking about the code the Prime Minister himself put in. These are his rules. If he would like to, he's got to do one of two things. He's either got to change the rules to fit his new standard, or continue to break his own rules. Or maybe a third choice, which is stop the fundraisers, because they are breaking the Prime Minister's own commitment to Canadians. He wants to go through that process, fine. What has exactly changed? He said the media can walk in. Okay. Well, people with a media pass and $250. Come on. Canadians don't buy this. It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. You can polish it as much as you want and all those kinds of things. My goodness.
Fundraiser that the Prime Minister is having tonight in Montreal. This is the first one they've done under this new regime, public to come, allow journalists to come. They're going to publish the guest lists, and no lobbyists will be allowed to come.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that has raised the bar significantly, or significantly enough that these are okay now?
Well, listen, there wouldn't be a need to do this if they didn't break their own rules right from the start. You know, they determined, when the Prime Minister wrote his own rules, he said that they shouldn't give any preferential access to anyone for the potential of influence. And so by breaking their own rules, they had to rewrite the rules. The reality is that they don't have to do this. I mean, the rules were already clearly in place, and they ended up breaking their own rules.
When your party was in government, I remember Jason Kenney used to have these kind of receptions in private homes. Journalists were invited to those. Public couldn't come. $1,500 to attend. How was what this government was doing any different from what the Conservative government was doing?
Well, I think, first of all, the Prime Minister made it very clear. They said that they were going to be different. He wrote the rules for himself, and he wrote the rules for his minister. He said that they were going to be different. Well, clearly, they weren't different. They were holding these private fundraisers. And what's important to understand with this as well is, these are ministers of the Crown and the Prime Minister who have incredible influence over billion-dollar budgets. And with a stroke of a pen, they can write checks to anybody. So the fact that people were writing checks to them and seeking preferential access and the potential of influence, I think it makes it that much different. What makes it even more different is the fact that the Prime Minister made these rules right off the start.
Is it reasonable, though, to think that a multi-billion-dollar decision is to be made by somebody who gives a fairly comparatively low amount of money, $1,500 maximum contribution under Canadian law, is not really going to swing an experienced politician if they make a decision on something like this?
Well, I think if you involve multiple donations and multiple cash for access events, I think that can speak to a matter of influence. I mean, the reality is, for example, if somebody wants to come here and approve a bank or get a bank approved by ministers and the Prime Ministers, who's to say that that potential access didn't have influence in the decision and the approval of that bank? So there are many circumstances that we can look at where influence can be gained, not just by $1,500, but by multiples of $1,500, multiples of people who are giving this type of money. And again, I go back to my point, they, with a broad stroke of a pen, have powerful and broad range influences over the decisions and over where this money goes. And that's why preferential access was wrong. And, the reality is they couldn't live by those rules. Who's to say that they're going to live by these rules as well?